let's work through my sister Sasha's lash map. So Sasha has a very rounded eye shape. Usually when someone has a rounded eye shape like she has, I would suggest working with less curl, such as a B curl, max C curl. The reason why I like to work with less of a curly lash extension is simply because when we work with less curl, we create more of a sleek, elongated finish. And rounded eyes really do complement a squirrel or kitten type mapping because it sleeks the eye out. So if we just take a look at her eye shape for a moment, you'll see that it's very rounded and almost protruding a little bit. I wouldn't say that she has a bulbous eye by any means, but her eyes naturally look very surprised. You can see that the middle of her eye has much more lift than the outer and inner corner. Because it's so rounded in the middle, if we used our longer lengths in this general section, what's gonna happen is we're going to make her look even more surprised, which we definitely don't want to do. Her eyes are already look super open. So in order to complement her, we're gonna use our longest lengths in this section here as shown in our mapping. This is where her eye starts to really tilt down. Now, you'll notice that I used a C curl and CC curl for Sasha's mapping. And the reason why I did that is because my dear sister has a different plan, completely different than mine. I would like to use a B curl and C curl on her, and she promised me that next time I could do what I wanted, even though she lives on the other side of the country and only gets her lashes done once a year. But she really wanted longer lengths on the inner corner. She said she does not like the look of short lengths on the inner and longer lengths on the outer. So I said, okay. She also says she really wants a wet lash style. She loves the texture, the darkness, but also the classic type finish that comes along with wet lashes, so she got it. And she said she really wanted to cover the inner part of her eye. So usually when we try to sleek an eye shape out that is rounded, typically, mapping will look a little something like this. So we would use B curl on the inner corner and potentially C curl on the outer corner. So B curl, I would usually start with very short lengths because we're really elongating that outer corner to draw the eyes apart and swoop them out. So my mapping would look maybe a little something like this. My middle part here, where it's the most lifted, that's gonna be my biggest section if I were following my own mapping, of course, but I'm not. I'm following my sister's mapping today. It would look a little something like this, and then quickly 9, 10, 11, maybe even some 12s, and then on the very outer corner, because the eye really does point down on that outer corner, I would bump back down my lengths. So what's gonna end up happening is this type of a look would create a cat eye type finish, but with a swirl mapping, because you can see my longest length is in this section here. Now, usually with very rounded eyes, we don't work with a crazy amount of length. So again, that is totally unique to each client and what they want, but just talking generally, we try to stick with shorter lengths, particularly on the inner and middle of the eye, because that's already beginning to lift, and then we really start going higher in our lengths once the eye starts to tilt down. So you'll notice that in Sasha's mapping, not talking about the general mapping anymore, back to Sasha's, that from this point here, this is her highest point. From this point here, the eye starts to really tilt down about 1 millimeter a section. And when it tilts down 1 millimeter a section, I know that it's time for me to bump my lengths up at least 1 millimeter per section as well. Now, if I wanted a more extreme cat eye, I could have definitely used higher lengths in this section here to really elongate this area and then bump right back down from there. So again, mapping is totally up to you. This shape, even though it's not what I would normally go for on a client with Sasha's eye shape, it ended up looking beautiful on her. So the mapping is really up to your creative freedom. There's no right or wrong, but it is nice to know the general rules when it comes to mapping.